In this episode, we're going to continue what I refer to as our magical history tour. We're going to look at a year that dramatically changed music. And that year is 1964. Now think about the artists who came before, who had hits just the previous year. People like Bobby Rydell, Fabian, Leslie Gore, and even the Angels. Well, in 1964, they basically all got swamped by a new wave of music that washed across our shores. And it's that music that makes it a joy to drop the needle on 1964. As 1964 starts, the country, and indeed the world, is still mourning the assassination of President Kennedy. But then, things start to look a little bit better. It's almost as if the sun is trying to break through. In February, just 10 days apart, one group with a very odd name releases 2 debut albums. And if you want to find out more about those records, check out my first episode of Bernie Drops the Needle. Now, like we do, I'm going to try to put the music in the context of the time to give you some idea of what was happening. In Hollywood, a new club opens. It's called the Whiskey A Go-Go on the Sunset Strip. And the house artist is Johnny Rivers, who actually records an album live from the Whiskey A Go-Go. Now, over the years, the Whiskey would become home to a number of breakthrough bands like the Buffalo Springfield and the Doors. But that's still a bit off in the future. On February 9th, 1964, that group with the weird name appears on The Ed Sullivan Show, and the Beatles are watched by over 73 million people. And I know, I was one of them. Now, the next morning, it seemed like every kid in America was convincing their parents that they needed a guitar or a set of drums. I know I did. I convinced my parents I needed a guitar, so we ordered one out of the Sears catalog, which meant that I had to wait for it to be delivered. That was a long time in my mind. When the guitar came, it was a cheap acoustic guitar and the action was kind of high, so you really had to press down and it was hard to play. Boy, my fingers sure hurt until I built up those calluses. But a friend of mine in school also had an acoustic guitar, so we started learning how to play folk songs. And we would play at school and church events. But we knew we wanted an electric guitar and amps. And so we both upgraded. So now we had electric guitars and we had amplifiers. But we didn't have a drummer. So we convinced another school friend that he needed to get a set of drums. And so he did. Oh boy, all of a sudden we were a band. And I remember the first gig we had, we only knew 6 songs. So it was at the school on a Saturday night, and they would bring in a record player and play records. It was called a sock hop, and kids would dance to the records. Well then, at a certain point, we had set up our gear, wasn't on a stage, just on the floor, and we played our 6 songs. And the kids loved it. In fact, they loved it so much, they asked us to play more. Well, we didn't have any more songs, so we played those 6 songs again. Then they went back to playing the records. And then about an hour later, they asked us to play again. So we played the 6 songs again. With that reaction, we knew what we had to do. We had to learn more songs, and quick. By April 4th of 1964, the Beatles hold the top 5 positions on the Billboard singles chart, with songs like With Can't Buy Me Love, Twist and Shout, She Loves You, I Want to Hold Your Hand, and Please Please Me. Although the Beatles dominate 1964, there was a lot of good music that came out that year. There was a duo called Simon and Garfunkel who released their first album, Wednesday Morning 3 a.m. And although it contains the song The Sounds of Silence, the album was a flop. 2 years later, The Sounds of Silence is augmented with electric instruments. Paul Simon knew nothing about that until he heard it on the radio, and he was incensed. But the song and the subsequent album became a hit. Besides Sounds of Silence, the Wednesday morning 3 a.m. album contains some traditional songs like Peggy-O and Go Tell It on the Mountain, and even a version of Bob Dylan's The Times They Are A-Changin'. Now, not only were the times a-changin', they were a-shakin'. On March 27th, Good Friday, Alaska was jolted by a massive earthquake. It's 9.2. It's the largest in American history. And one day later, on March 28th, pirate radio station Radio Caroline starts broadcasting just beyond the UK waters, playing pop music the BBC wouldn't. And the English kids loved it. Back here in the US, Johnny Cash releases his 19th album, I Walk the Line, and it instantly becomes a hit for him. Songs include the title, Folsom Prison Blues, Hey Porter, and Understand Your Man. Another artist who later becomes good friends with Johnny Cash releases 2 albums in 1964, and that artist is Bob Dylan. His 3rd album is aptly titled The Times They Are A-Changin'. Besides the title song, it features Only a Pawn in Their Game, One Too Many Mornings, and The Lonesome Death of Haiti Carroll. The same year, he releases another side of Bob Dylan. This album contains the now classics All I Really Want to Do, Chimes of Freedom, My Back Pages, I Don't Believe You, She Acts Like We Never Have Met, and It Ain't Me, Babe. In 1964, in New York, 2 venues opened for the first time. One of them is Shea Stadium. And just a year later, the Beatles will play a very memorable concert at Shea. The other venue is the New York's World's Fair, which had a number of pavilions that were enhanced by Walt Disney Studios creating audio animatronics for those pavilions. The same technology they had debuted a year before at the Tiki Room in Disneyland. On TV, a new game show premiered, Jeopardy, with its host Art Fleming, who held the position until 1979. Now, when we think of Jeopardy, all of us think of Alex Trebek. But he actually didn't start hosting until 1984, when Jeopardy got syndicated. On the big screen, we see Mary Poppins from Disney, a big hit combining live action with animation. And from the UK, our favorite spy, James Bond, is back in the unforgettable Goldfinger. Not only do we have the British Spy, but we have a lot of great music coming from the UK. A lot of bands releasing their first album, like the Kinks. The album was called The Kinks in the UK, but here in the US it was retitled to be You Really Got Me, to capitalize on their monumental first hit. The Rolling Stones' first album is released in the UK, but when it comes to the US, it's retitled as England's Newest Hitmakers. It features Not Fade Away, Route 66, Carol, Tell Me, and Walkin' the Dog. Later in that year, they release 12 by 5, their second album, with songs like Time Is on My Side, It's All Over Now, Congratulations, and Susie Q. The popularity of all of this music gives rise to a new TV show called Shindig, which gives television exposure to all these up-and-coming new stars. Even though the British invasion is in full swing, there's still music coming out of the US. The Beach Boys kept very busy in 1964 and released 4 albums in that year. They are Shut Down Volume 2, which had the hit Fun 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 on it, All Summer Long with I Get Around, the Beach Boys Christmas album, and the Beach Boys Concert. Some great songs, but they just couldn't capture the same level of excitement that Beatlemania was causing. The decisive issue of segregation continues to rage across the South in the US. And the Beatles are on tour, and John Lennon flatly states that they will not play a concert in Florida to a segregated audience. Lennon wins. Florida caves. In this year alone in the US, the Beatles released 6 albums, Introducing the Beatles, Meet the Beatles, the Beatles' second album, A Hard Day's Night, Something New, and Beatles 65, which was actually released in December of '64. So it's easy to see that musically, 1964 belongs to the Beatles. As Christmas was approaching, a stop-action television show aired for the first time, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It becomes an instant classic and is still shown on TV 55 years later. As the year is ending, on December 23rd, a new pirate radio station launches in the UK, Wonderful Radio London. And a bit later, when The Who released their album called The Who Sell Out, they included jingles from Radio London on the album. That's 1964. So what do you think? Is it a year that changed music? My vote on that would be yeah, yeah, yeah. And with that, let's keep it rocking. If you liked this episode, hit the like button, and you can also leave me a comment down below, and I'll respond to you. If you subscribe, we'll let you know when future episodes come out.